The air in the living room was thick with the scent of spices and false laughter. It was one of those rare family gatherings where everyone pretended the cracks in the foundation didn't exist. Mira, in her simple cotton sari, moved quietly, ensuring every guest felt welcomed, her years of dedication to her son's happiness a silent offering. She paused near the doorway, catching fragments of a conversation. It was Ria, her daughter-in-law, animatedly describing the stressful process of renovating their new kitchen. Mira had a suggestion, one that came from decades of managing a home. Beta, Mira began gently, stepping closer. The contractor who did our neighbor's work, the one with the good rates, he used a beautiful matte finish. Perhaps. Ria's voice cut through Mira's like a shard of glass. She didn't turn around. Instead, she let out a sharp, theatrical laugh that drew the attention of the four cousins standing nearby. "Oh, Mom," Ria said, her tone dripping with saccharine condescension. "We aren't asking for ancient history advice. This is a modular kitchen, not something you'd find in a museum." She finally turned, her smile plastic, and in a loud stage whisper that was clearly meant for everyone to hear, she added, "Honestly, sometimes I think she's going a little crazy." The word hit Mira in the chest with the physical force of a blow. Crazy. It echoed in the sudden vast silence of the room. It wasn't just an insult. It was a public execution of her quiet, earned dignity. Mira stood frozen, her hands gripping the edges of the water tray. The gentle smile she wore only moments before dissolving into a mask of pure disbelief. The cousins shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Ria, emboldened by the attention, gave a shrug that seemed to say, "What can you do?" Mira looked past Ria, her gaze searching for the one person whose defense she didn't even have to ask for. Arjun, her son. He was standing by the window, a phone pressed to his ear, pretending to be deeply engrossed in a call that everyone knew was meaningless. His shoulders were tense. He heard it all. He saw it all. He didn't make eye contact. He didn't drop the phone. He didn't take a single step toward her. Arjun, the boy for whom she had sacrificed her entire existence, was paralyzed by fear. Fear of a momentary domestic scene, fear of displeasing his wife, fear of simply doing the right thing. The insult from Ria was cruel, but Arjun's silence was the true devastation. It was the sound of her life's work being dismissed, the erasure of her identity. It wasn't just a lack of support. It was a betrayal that redefined their relationship in a single painful moment. Mira felt a peculiar coldness spread through her veins. She lowered the tray with slow, deliberate care, placing it on the nearest table. Her movements were unervingly calm, the outward opposite of the storm raging inside. She looked at Ria one last time, not with anger, but with a profound, aching pity for the smallness of her soul. Then she turned and walked without a word, out of the room and up the stairs to the solitude of her small room. The click of the door latch was barely audible, but to Mira, it sounded like the definitive closure of a beautiful, painful chapter. That night, lying in the dark, Mira didn't cry. She didn't let a single tear escape. She only remembered the warmth of another time, another room, and the promise she had made to a smaller, more hopeful version of her son. The memory was both a balm and a torture, setting the stage for a truth she now had to face. The small dusty photo frame on her bedside table held the key to the past. It was a picture of Arjun at his college graduation, his face shining with the promise of a future Mira had built brick by arduous brick. A wave of nostalgia, heavy with unacknowledged grief, washed over her as she picked it up. Mira's story wasn't one of inherited wealth or easy paths. It began with the sudden gaping loss of her husband 15 years ago. She was a young teacher then, left with a mountain of grief and a small, ambitious boy to raise. She could have crumbled, but a mother's love, she realized, often required the strength of steel beneath the gentleness of silk. The first sacrifice was the most difficult, her career. The government school salary was a comfort, but it was rigid. To put Arjun through the best private schools and later the engineering course he desired, she needed more. She tutored, took on extra marking assignments, and stitched blouses late into the night. Her hands, now frail, bore the invisible scars of those tireless hours. She remembered the day Arjun came home, his face alight, clutching a brochure for a prestigious management course. It was an exorbitant fee, a dizzying sum. Mira looked at the figures, then at her own reflection in the window, a reflection that was already fading, worn down by hard work. She knew what she had to do. That evening, she opened the small, carved wooden box where her late husband's few remaining letters lay, next to the gold bangles and necklace she had inherited. The jewelry wasn't just metal. It was a symbol of her marriage, a tangible link to a love she had lost. Yet, that night, under the harsh light of a single bulb, she packaged them carefully. "This is the last of it, Beta," she had told Arjun the next morning, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "It's enough for your first year's tuition. Don't worry about the rest. Just study." Arjun had hugged her then, a genuine bone-crushing hug. "I promise, Ma," he had whispered into her hair. "I will make it all worth it. I will build you a beautiful life." And he had built a beautiful life. He had started his own successful manufacturing business. He had bought this house, a large modern home, where the paint was still fresh, and the garden meticulously maintained. Mira had believed, with the innocent faith of a mother, that she was building her own happy haven alongside him. She had poured her savings into the down payment, insisted on a joint name on the property, and then, in the spirit of a loving home, let her son and his wife take the lead. Now the chilling contrast was unbearable. The warmth of the memory of those sacrifices, the cold weight of the gold in her palm, the ache in her bones from the tutoring, collided violently with the coldness of the current moment. The love she gave was unconditional. The neglect she received felt brutally transactional. She had built a temple of love, and now she was a forgotten, unwanted idol within its walls. The house they lived in, this symbol of his success, was as much hers as it was his, funded by pieces of her past. Yet she felt like a guest, an intruder who was merely tolerating her. The humiliation from earlier hadn't just stung. It had forced her to look at this life with brutal clarity. This wasn't just about an insult. It was about the systematic erasure of her value. If they could dismiss her mind, they could dismiss her presence and eventually her rights. She wiped her eyes, not with sadness, but with a fierce, quiet resolve. The past was a painful teacher, and she was a quick study. She needed to understand how far this betrayal went, and she knew the answer lay not in her memories, but in the present reality of the home around her. The weeks following the incident were a slow, suffocating emotional siege. Riya began a methodical campaign to marginalize Mira, making her feel like an unwelcome stranger in the very house she helped build. The subtle moves were the cruelest. Cupboards containing the family's good china were suddenly locked, the keys jangling pointedly on Riya's waist. Mira's favorite armchair was moved from the sunny living room corner to a dark spot in the corridor. "I just need to keep things tidy, Mom," Riya would chirp, her tone always sweet, always managing to imply Mira was the cause of the mess. "You know, things sometimes get lost." The accusations escalated from passive-aggressive reorganization to open questioning of Mira's memory. If the maid forgot a chore, Riya would turn to Mira. "Mom, did you forget to tell her? Your memory is playing up again, isn't it?" Mira, usually patient, felt the growing, suffocating pressure. But the turning point came on a cool Tuesday morning. She went to the old steel trunk kept in the back of her closet, the one containing her late husband's important papers. She needed to check the original property tax receipts. The lock was intact, but when she opened the trunk, it was neatly, terrifyingly empty. Her husband's letters, her insurance policies, and the original deed papers for the house were all gone. Mira found Riya downstairs arranging flowers. Her hands were shaking. "Riya," she said, her voice strained. "My trunk, the documents. Do you know where they are?" Riya didn't flinch. She adjusted a lily. "Oh, those old dusty papers? Yes, I moved them. They were a fire hazard, Mom. Honestly, it's all digitized now. You don't need to hoard junk like that. Why are you so worried? Are you forgetting things again?" The question wasn't genuine concern. It was a poisoned dart, a deliberate mockery of Mira's mental state. When Arjun returned that evening, tired and detached, Mira confronted him, her voice trembling with the gravity of her discovery. "Arjun, the house papers are gone. Riya moved them. I need to see them." Arjun avoided her gaze, shuffling his feet. He had clearly been briefed. "Ma, please calm down. Riya said you were getting agitated over some old files. Look, the house is safe. It's a good time to be cautious about your stress levels, isn't it? Riya is worried about you, Ma." He paused, then delivered the final crushing blow. Maybe you should consider seeing a doctor, Ma. Just to, check on the forgetfulness. It's for your own good. The suggestion, delivered with that detached concern, was the ultimate emotional betrayal. It was an attempt to silence her not by argument, but by pathologizing her. It was the moment Mira realized she wasn't just being insulted. She was being gaslit out of her own life. Her son, the one person who should have protected her, had become an active participant in her manipulation. She walked out of the room, her composure finally shattering, but not with tears, with a terrifying clarity. She needed air and she needed the truth. The next morning, while Arjun and Riya were out, Mira found the spare key to Arjun's home office. She bypassed the drawers and went straight for the safe hidden behind a bookshelf. She knew the combination, it was her birthday. Inside, she found what she was looking for. A sleek, professional-looking document, recent and stamped. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she read the legal language. The house, the home she had saved for, the property she had insisted be in both their names, the structure that represented her entire life's work, had been quietly, completely transferred into Arjun's sole name 6 months ago. Her signature was there, scanned and pasted, a crude forgery. Riya's initials were everywhere, co-signing documents as a witness. The world tilted. The suggestion to see a doctor wasn't about forgetfulness. It was a preemptive strike, a way to discredit her when she inevitably realized the truth. The emotional betrayal had transformed into financial treachery. She didn't weep over the property. She wept over the callousness of her son, the depth of his deception. She closed the safe, her face set in a cold mask of determination. They wanted to treat her like she was crazy? They wanted to wipe her from the deed? Fine. She would play a new role now. Not the victim but the strategist. The time for silent sacrifice was over. She knew exactly who to call. The old familiar scent of leather-bound books and strong filter coffee hit Mira as she entered the office of Mr. Khanna, her childhood friend and a highly respected solicitor. The quiet, measured calm of his study was a sanctuary compared to the chaos of her home. Mira laid the forged property document and the old tax receipts on his mahogany desk. She spoke without emotion, recounting the public humiliation, the disappearance of the original deeds, the suggestion that she was losing her mind, and the final shocking discovery. Mr. Khanna listened intently, his expression shifting from sympathy to grim focus. He examined the papers closely, running a practiced finger over the telltale blurring of the scanned signature. Mira, he said gently, this is a clear case of fraudulent transfer and undue influence. The original deed showing the co-ownership holds significant weight. The fact that the registration was done without your physical presence, and the signature is a forgery, gives us an immediate case. They spent the next few hours meticulously tracing the paper trail, unearthing the precise legal loopholes that had been abused. Mr. Khanna explained the strategy. They wouldn't seek immediate revenge. They would seek justice and freeze the asset. We will not alert them, Mr. Khanna advised, his voice a low rumble. We will act silently and swiftly. We will file an injunction, a legal notice that will freeze any further transaction on the property. We will force them to come to us, not the other way around. Mira nodded. The pain had solidified into a fierce, cold composure. She didn't want to destroy her son, but she needed to make him realize the price of his moral cowardice and Riya's greed. She wanted her dignity and her right to a home restored. The next few weeks were a strange silent war. Mira continued her routine, acting as if nothing was wrong. Riya, convinced she had won, grew even more brazen, her tone a blend of control and pity. Arjun remained conveniently distant, avoiding any meaningful conversation. Then one Thursday morning the silence shattered. Riya was in the living room when the official court courier arrived. He handed her a thick, crisp envelope marked with the severe seal of the district court. Riya's face, usually so composed, went pale as she read the first few lines. Injunction order. Freezing all property transactions. Allegations of fraudulent transfer. The paper slipped from her nerveless fingers. Her triumphant mask cracked, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated panic. She scooped up the document, eyes wide, and ran to the kitchen shouting Arjun's name. Arjun, still in his work clothes, walked in moments later, his brow furrowed with annoyance. What is it, Ria? Why are you shouting? She thrust the notice at him. Your mother. Look, she's taking us to court. She froze the house. We can't sell it, we can't take loans, nothing. She's ruined us. Arjun read the document, his face draining of color. The legal jargon was clear, sharp and undeniable. He looked up, his eyes meeting Mira's across the distance of the hall. She was standing by the top of the stairs watching them. His mother, the woman he had dismissed as going crazy, the woman he had betrayed with his silence, had just played a card he never knew she held. The cold, unmoving strength in her gaze was more terrifying than any scream could have been. He wasn't looking at his meek, sacrificing mother anymore. He was looking at a woman who had been pushed too far, a woman who understood the language of consequence. For the first time in years, Arjun was forced to face the truth. The woman he allowed to be mocked was the foundation he had tried to steal out from under her. The game of emotional manipulation had ended the moment the lawyer's letter arrived. The immediate fallout was chaos, but Mira remained untouched, observing the storm from the stillness of her newly realized power. Ria, driven by the fear of losing her luxury, switched tactics instantly. The scorn vanished, replaced by an artificial, trembling penitence. Arjun too finally faced his mother. He came to her room, his eyes red, not with sorrow but with the shame of being caught. Ma, please, you can't do this, he pleaded, the polished businessman reduced to a frightened boy. It was a mistake. Ria pushed me. We'll change the papers back. Please withdraw the suit. Mira sat calmly on her bed folding a sari. She didn't raise her voice, but every word she spoke carried the weight of years of silent suffering. Arjun, she said, her voice steady and clear, I didn't do this to you. You and Ria did this to yourselves. You called me crazy, she continued, her gaze fixed on him. You took my late husband's memories and my right to a home, and you erased them. You didn't just forge my signature. You forged our entire relationship. That letter is not my revenge, Arjun. It is the consequence of your choices. Ria then appeared, attempting a tearful apology, blaming stress, blaming everything but her own greed. Auntie, I am so sorry. Please, let's be a family. We'll be good, I promise. Just tell the lawyer you changed your mind. Mira looked at her with an expression that was neither forgiveness nor hatred. It was simply distance. You cannot apologize away a betrayal that was carried out over months, Ria. You cannot put a price on the loss of trust. Mira's choice was not revenge but separation. In the end, Mr. Khanna secured a swift, clean settlement. Mira did not take the entire house. She took her rightful share, the capital she had invested, plus a fair compensation for the illegal transfer. She chose peace over ownership, dignity over dominance. A month later, Mira moved out. She had purchased a small, sunlit apartment in a quiet neighborhood, close to the local temple and a small park. It was modest, but it was entirely legally and emotionally hers. On the day she left, she didn't look back. Arjun and Ria stood on the porch, watching her go small, defeated figures against the backdrop of a large, cold house. She knew their victory was hollow. The house was safe, but the home was broken forever. Mira settled into her new life with an ease she hadn't felt in years. She joined a women's book club, started volunteering at a local school, and her old confidence, the sharp wit that Ria had tried to call crazy, returned. The community welcomed her, recognizing the quiet strength in her demeanor. She wasn't the victim who had been pushed out. She was the survivor who had walked away with her head held high. Silence is not weakness. It is often the armor of the underestimated. And in the end, no material possession can ever be worth the priceless peace of a mother's dignity.